The last visitors had drifted out of the Prairie Rails Museum by 5:30, leaving curator Lila Penrose alone with the faint smell of coal dust and lemon floor polish. April twilight pressed its indigo face against the depot windows, while Lila straightened stacks of brochures and restored a plush velvet seat in the 1897 Pullman car to its dignified posture. It was inventory week, which meant long nights in the archive room, a thermos of coffee, and the company of her black cat, Midnight, who roamed the museum after hours as self-appointed mouser-in-chief. At 7, Lila heated leftover cornbread in the employee microwave, opened the ledger on her oak desk, and switched on the small desk lamp that cast a golden pool of light. That was when she heard it. A crisp metallic clack-clack from the old Western Union sounder mounted on the far wall. The exhibit had no power, Lila was sure of it, yet the sounder clicked again, briskly, deliberately. Her heart trotted but did not bolt. She had grown up reading Morse for fun with her grandfather. She closed her eyes and translated automatically. QA, VOC. The rhythm was uneven, as if whoever sent the message was a little rusty, but unmistakably alive. She stood, cornbread forgotten, and crossed the polished pine floor toward the telegraph cabinet. The sounder rattled on. Pay 50K, stop. Then. Or secret goes public, stop. The clicks halted, leaving the depot steeped in hush. Lila's skin prickled. Someone was using the defunct line to issue blackmail demands, and they had chosen her museum as the messenger. Midnight leapt onto a baggage cart, tail twitching. "I know, it's creepy," Lila told him, rubbing the cat's head for courage. She flicked on the overhead lights and inspected the sounder. Its original wires ran nowhere. During exhibit installation, they had been snipped flush behind the walnut case. The only visible source of power was a new AA battery wedged under the brass armature, small, improvised, and definitely not part of the exhibit. Someone had turned the display into a covert receiver. Lila jotted the message on a yellow notepad, then phoned Sheriff Tom Olson. Tom had gone to high school with her. He trusted her instincts and knew better than to dismiss a Morse code mystery. When he arrived 20 minutes later, he studied the battery, the spliced leads, and Lila's neat transcription. "You sure it's blackmail?" he asked, low voice echoing in the cavernous depot. "Pretty sure." Tom ran a hand through his blonde crew cut. "Whoever wired this must have a transmitter close by. Museum's metal roof would block a weak radio signal. They'd need to be on the grounds or right outside." He swept the platforms with a flashlight, found nothing, and promised to contact the radio club in the morning. Lila locked up and drove home under a prairie moon, unsettled but stubbornly curious. The next evening she returned armed with extra batteries for her handheld ham receiver and a pack of cinnamon rolls. At 9:02 the sounder clicked again. Lila translated aloud. Bank. Then. Swap. She scribbled the full message. "Bank lot to swap Friday, stop 11 p.m. Stop, come alone." "Stop, bank lot," she murmured. The museum's main donor and board president, Randall Bixby, also chaired the local bank. That felt like more than coincidence. Lila phoned Tom, who agreed. "But let's keep this quiet," he said. "Blackmail thrives on rumor, and Bixby's got half the town's mortgages." After hanging up, Lila wandered through the dimly lit freight room, thoughts chugging like a slow locomotive. Who around the museum knew Morse? 2 long-time docents, twins Hattie and Mavis Lederer, had been switchboard operators in the 50s. A retired Union Pacific telegrapher, Harland Briggs, volunteered on weekends. Teen intern Dylan Cruz tinkered with radio kits. Add Randall Bixby himself, a Civil War reenactor who loved historic gadgets. That made 5 potential senders, and perhaps as many intended victims. Before leaving, Lila examined the 1906 caboose parked on the siding. She noticed fresh scuff marks near the cupola ladder and a faint smell of solder. Inside, under a fold-down conductor's desk, she found a shoebox containing a palm-sized Morse practice key wired to a tiny battery-powered transmitter. She photographed it, careful not to disturb fingerprints. The box sat atop this week's Omaha Gazette. One headline circled in red, "Eat Rail Museum Land Deed Missing." Lila's pulse tapped double time. She slid the paper into her satchel, turned out the caboose light, and locked the yard gate behind her. Wednesday morning, Board President Randall Bixby strode into Lila's office, wearing a starch-heavy shirt and the expression of a man expecting bad news. "Lila, my dear," he boomed, adjusting a gold teapin shaped like a steam locomotive. "I hear you've been asking about the old land deed. Routine curiosity, I trust?" His smile was polished brass. Lila handed him coffee in a souvenir mug. "Routine, and yet the deed should be in the archive fire safe. It isn't." Randall waved a manicured hand. "Likely misfiled. We'll find it." He glanced at the Gazette sticking out of her satchel. His smile dimmed, then returned at half wattage. "If you need anything, you know where my office is." As he left, Midnight jumped onto the windowsill, back arched. Lila scratched behind the cat's ear. "I know, buddy. He makes me itch, too." That evening, the Telegraph crackled earlier, at 8:30. Ranch Oaks. Pay $5,000. The amount had grown by an extra 0, and Ranch Oaks was the Bixby family spread west of town. Lila typed the message into her phone and sent it to Tom. He replied, "On my way." 10 minutes later, he arrived with 2 deputies and a spectrum analyzer. They stationed themselves in the caboose, lights off, gear humming quietly. If the transmitter lit up again, they could triangulate. But that night, the blackmailer went silent. Thursday dawned windy and bright. Lila and Dylan Cruz set out chairs for Saturday's whistle-stop book fair. Dylan, 19, wore a T-shirt that read, "Sleep Repeat." "Cool motto," Lila said, pointing to the shirt. "Thanks, Morse is underrated. You know someone's sending code around here?" His dark eyes glittered with excitement. "Funny you mention it," Lila said lightly. "What do you know?" Dylan hesitated, then shrugged. "I picked up chatter on my rig at home. Real gritty signal, close range. Thought it was Mr. Briggs practicing." "When was that?" "Couple nights ago." He scratched the back of his neck. "I couldn't copy the whole thing. Mom made me shut down, but I got secret goes public. Sounded juicy." Lila forced a neutral smile. "Well, if you hear more, record it." Dylan nodded, cheeks flushed with the thrill of possible intrigue. That afternoon, Lila drove to Harland Briggs's modest bungalow. The retired telegrapher welcomed her with black coffee and a living room museum of brass keys, headphones, and QSL cards. "Harland," she began, "did you by chance send any messages to the depot this week?" He blinked behind thick lenses. "Haven't keyed a thing in months. Arthritis is staging a hostile takeover." He flexed gnarled fingers ruefully. "Why do you ask?" Lila explained the late-night transmissions. Harland listened, face knotted with concern. "Code's a gentleman's language," he said. "Using it to threaten. Hateful business." He pressed a bakelite key. The arm moved stiffly. If you need help deciphering, I'm available, though my fists ain't what they were." She thanked him and departed, uneasy but unconvinced he was involved. Friday arrived with a prairie squall that rattled tin roofs and herded tumbleweed down Main Street. Tom phoned at noon. "We traced Wednesday's signal to within 50 yards of the museum, but wind messed with yesterday's readings." "Something's going to happen tonight," Lila said. "The blackmailer set a deadline. Bank parking lot, 11 p.m. Tom exhaled. "I'll stake it out. You stay clear." But Lila had no intention of sitting home knitting. She brewed extra coffee, donned her warmest denim jacket, and slipped the handheld receiver into her tote. Midnight meowed accusingly as she left. At 10:30, she parked 2 blocks from First Pioneer Bank, cut the headlights, and walked the final stretch along alleys fragrant with lilac. The wind carried a damp chill, but also a promise. Truth steamed like a train inching into sight. Behind a row of ornamental spruces, Lila crouched, receiver to her ear. The earbud crackled, then burst into steady Morse. "Bricks," she whispered, translating. "Bring cash, now stop, no cops, stop." She texted Tom. "Blackmailer on air. I'm at lot." 2 minutes later, a black SUV rolled into the lot. Randall Bixby stepped out, clutching a picnic basket. He wore no overcoat despite the cold. His brisk strides said this was not the first time he'd been summoned. From the shadows to Lila's left emerged another figure. Medium build, grey hoodie, ball cap low. The figure motioned. Bixby placed the basket beneath a lamppost, then backed away, hands raised. The hoodie figure stooped for the basket. Wind gusted, pushing back the hood enough for Lila to glimpse a sharp profile and silver ponytail. Sandra Hollowell, the museum's accountant. Lila's exhale fogged in disbelief. Sandra, precise and shy, forever reconciling grant receipts, was blackmailing the town's wealthiest man. Tom's cruiser headlights swept the lot. Sandra bolted with the basket, but Dylan Cruz stepped from nowhere, blocking her escape. She swung the basket, bills sprayed like startled birds. Tom tackled her, while a deputy apprehended Bixby, who was attempting to melt into the shrubbery. Within minutes, the bank lot swarmed with red and blue lights. Inside the sheriff's office interview room, Sandra sat rigid, fingers twisting a wadded tissue. Lila, given honorary investigator status, listened from a corner chair while Tom questioned her. "I didn't want the money for myself," Sandra said hoarsely. "I wanted it for the museum." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Sandra swallowed. 2 months ago, Lila asked me to digitize property records. I discovered the original land deed for the museum property named the county as trustee, not the museum directly. But a second deed, typed, unsigned, had been slipped into the file decades later. It transfers ownership to a shell company called Prairie Heritage LLC. Tom glanced at Lila. Lila's stomach sank. Sandra continued. LLC paperwork leads back to Bixby. He planned to evict the museum after the summer gala, then turn the site into a themed resort. "Why blackmail?" Tom asked. "I needed leverage. If I exposed him outright, he'd bury me in lawsuits. But Morse, the old language, seemed poetic justice. Harland taught a workshop last year. I learned enough to manage." Tom folded his hands. "You installed the receiver?" "Yes, and Dylan helped me build the transmitter, though he didn't know why." Lila leaned forward. "Why demand 50,000? Sandra's eyes brimmed. "Legal retainer. I wanted to hire counsel to fight the fraudulent deed. I thought if I scared him into paying, I'd have funds and proof of wrongdoing." And forging a blackmail trail wouldn't hurt, Tom said gently. She wiped tears. I know it was wrong, but saving the museum felt bigger than the law. Tom sighed. Intent matters, but so do actions. We'll sort it with the county attorney. Saturday morning, sun gilded the depot roof as Lila unlocked the front doors for the book fair. Despite the prior night's drama, or perhaps because gossip had spread like wildfire, the turnout was record-breaking. Hattie and Mavis poured coffee, Harland demonstrated telegraph keys, and Dylan sold dot-sleep-repeat T-shirts faster than he could restock. By noon, Sheriff Tom arrived, hat tucked under his arm. He found Lila near the Pullman car, where children clambered onto brocade seats. Update, he said softly. Bixby confessed. He bought the shell company and forged the second deed. He'll resign from the board and the bank, maybe face fraud charges. And Sandra? Cooperating witness, probation likely, community service, maybe auditing museum donations, he added wryly. Relief rolled through Lila like a gentle train whistle. The museum's future was safe for now. She climbed onto the depot platform and rang the brass bell to gather attention. Conversations died down. Friends, she began, voice clear over prairie breeze. Our museum stands for the stories that connect us. Steel rails, human courage, invention. This week we were reminded that truth travels too, sometimes in dot and dash. Thanks to many citizens, our tracks remain secure. Applause burst, warm and prolonged. That night, after volunteers departed and midnight curled on a sun-warmed bench, Lila wandered to the Telegraph exhibit. She reattached the original cut wires, restoring integrity. Then she sent one crisp message into the quiet building, the sounder's clicks echoing like small applause. Thank you. A breeze rustled through the open window, carrying the scent of wild clover, and the little depot in western Nebraska settled into peaceful dusk once more.